We're very high on inclusion and diversity, right? And that's a very key enabler for our business and decision making within Netflix. And because we are so invested and so high on applying inclusion and diversity to all aspects of what we do, starting from our content creation to our business strategies, we can't leave contingent workforce aside because they are closer to us. They are part of our team.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. My name is Lydia, and joining us today is Vinos Samuel of Netflix Asia Pacific. Welcome, Vinos, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to have this conversation with you.
So, Vinos, walk us through your experience in the talent space. I understand it's been vast, and it's you have a variety of roles that you've taken on in the past, and maybe a little bit about your current role at Netflix as well.
Yeah, sure. I never planned to be in recruitment, as with most people, what they say, we just land here. I did my engineering back in Bombay, and I got into a business process outsourcing company where I held a few roles in training, in being a team leader for operations. And that's where I got this opportunity to get into recruitment and try out the volume recruitment space, which is a very different ballgame when you do it for a call center of 1,000, 2,000 people with high churn. So that's what got me introduced to recruitment. But having stayed there for 6 years, I got this opportunity to move to an American company which manages contingent workforce for clients across the globe. And they had their own technology to manage contingent workforce as well. So I thought that would be a good pivot to understand what this landscape looks like. So I got there. I managed a couple of their accounts. When I say accounts, those are clients who outsource their contingent workforce management to external consultants or external agencies that specialize in that workforce in terms of hiring, managing, onboarding, payments, and then also exit. So the whole life cycle of contingent. So that was a very exciting space for me because it was very different. It was a consulting role, helping the client implement the technology, implement a workforce, managing suppliers that they had who could bring in this population of workforce for their technology roles. So I learned a lot. Then, having gained that experience, I got an opportunity to work for Randstad, SourceRight, which again has a business for managing these workforces for clients. So I moved to Singapore, managed a few of their accounts, prominently Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan Chase, Walmart as well. So I had a portfolio of accounts, did the same thing in terms of managing the workforce for clients and driving efficiencies, cost savings, ensuring that they have access to the right non-employee workforce in different markets across Asia Pacific. I did that for about 10 years, and then I thought maybe I should do something else. So I got into recruitment process outsourcing field, where I did work with sales teams to build solutions for clients when they want to outsource their recruitment operations and function. It could be the whole function, it could be a part of it, it could be for a country, it could be a project, it could be any of that. And you build a solution in terms of what technology to use, if at all, how many recruiters can we place, how do we train them, what workflow would be put in, etc. And then pricing associated with it. And then once we win any of those accounts, I would also implement it for those clients. So that was the experience that I had in the recruitment process outsourcing space before I came to Netflix to set up the non-employee workforce team in Asia Pacific. Coming out of COVID, we did realize that the contingent workforce numbers were going up, and the need to have a more articulated framework for managing contingent talent in Asia Pacific came up, and I came in to support that.
Yeah, so building a contingent workforce process from the ground up would be accurate to say, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say ground up because we did have some of the practices in UCAN region, had been managing contingent workforce for a while, but the practice wasn't set up in Asia Pacific. So it was quite decentralized and haphazard in terms of the decision making, supporting with panel and those kind of things.
So, under what circumstances? I know you mentioned COVID and that being a critical period, your last 3 years with Netflix. And under what conditions would large companies or any company look to contingent workforces as a talent solution, so to speak?
Yeah. So when a need arises for hiring, not all hiring need means that you need an open-ended full-time contract with an employee, right? You might need to hire for a paternity backfill, for example. You might want to hire where you have peak upload in your organization, but that's not going to last beyond 6 months, for example, or a year. So that means that you will need contingent workforce to come in. It could also be that you are automating a lot of your workflows within the organization, which means you need some roles to be filled in, but you know that role is not going to look the same a year or two down the line. So it doesn't make sense to go and hire a full-time employee there. So these are typically the situations where you look for contingent talent. And contingent talent, again, is very broad. We define it into 3 buckets. So one, where you are hiring a temporary worker through a staffing agency partner. So that's like a temporary contractor that you hire. So they are more like full-time employees. They are on-site, integrated with your teams, working on things which are similar to what a full-time employee would do, but they are not your employees because they are payrolled by a staffing agency and they are deployed to work here. Then you have independent contractors who can also be called freelancers. So you bring them in for specific projects. They're SMEs in that field, say graphic designers or video editors. So you bring them on a services contract. And then you also have parts of work that you outsource to other providers in technology, in marketing. It could also be your facilities in the company. So that through those contracts, you have vendor workers coming in and supporting your organization. So that's contingent talent as well. So broadly, it's these 3 categories.
So what might be some takeaways you've had of the contingent talent landscape in Asia Pacific? I mean, what is the take-up rate for that? And is there really a demand for the kind of work that's coming in from needs such as what you have described?
Yeah. So in my experience over the last 10 years, most organizations have a big chunk of contingent talent. But because it's very decentralized, nobody knows at any point of time how many contingent talent do they use at any point of time. Because it is not your people cost. It is your operating expenses from where contingent talent payments go from. So let's say, for example, in an organization where headcounts become difficult to get, you would go and hire a contractor. But because you're not tracking it, you really don't know how many contractors are there in your organization. So I think close to about 30 to 40% of workforce in an organization is contingent, depending upon however you want to slice and dice it. Like if you want to consider outsourcing, because many companies outsource a lot of work, do you want to consider that as contingent or not? So depending upon that, it's close to about 25 to 30% would be contingent, in my opinion.
And in terms of operational challenges, I'm sure you've had to set up these processes as well, right? In all the roles that you've taken, most of the roles at least. What are some of these operational challenges, or where do you start in terms of building a streamlined process in order to manage contingent workforces?
Yeah, it connects to my previous answer. So you need visibility, right? You need to know what are you doing, like what kind of roles are you hiring with contingent, where are they located, like who's hiring them, etc. So you need to do a bit of a due diligence, and that can happen with your financial records. It can happen with your security information in terms of who's coming in and going out. It could also go back. It could also be connected to your procurement agreements that exist with suppliers like staffing agency partners, outsource partners, etc. So you can start somewhere to try get visibility of what's happening on that space. Many a times there is no clear owner for contingent talent in terms of who owns this workforce and how should it be brought into the strategic conversations. Many organizations have it under procurement because they think about it as cost savings So it's like procuring something on lower cost, do a particular work. So it's got a very procurement angle to it as well. Some companies have it under finance because it's cost, and finance manages it. So it's different in different organizations. At Netflix, we have it under talent because we know that though we are hiring contractors, we are hiring certain skills that are coming along with it. And that is part of your overall workforce. So what are you building within versus what you're buying outside, right? So we look at it that way. So from a talent perspective or from a HR perspective, it is a great pipe for us to build full-time talent as well. So if you're hiring good contractors on the temporary workforce side or independent contractor side, tomorrow when you have a full-time need, you could easily convert them too. So if you do this well, it is a great inlet for your full-time employees as well. With regards to processes, compliance is key because these are not your employees. You need to know what the regulations are in different countries. What is your risk appetite to put in? Like you need to put some safeguards in terms of how you're going to show who's your employee and who's your non-employee. So how are you going to categorize them within your HRIS system, for example? Like what are the role types can you go to for a contractor versus a full-time employee? You take countries like Korea, Japan, where there are well-defined roles that can only be contractors. So how do you put controls over it? What are the tenure limitations that you're going to put in? Like it shouldn't happen that for any reason, business is just procuring contingent talent. So the practice should be only when the need is for a contractor to come in, they take it. So you put guardrails like a 12-month check-in to say, is this really a contract need or is it a full-time need? Then you can extend probably till 18 months or so. So you put some guardrails to build your workflow.
Now, if these might be, just generally speaking, although it might be short-term work or short-term engagements with contractors or freelancers, how do you ensure that they have completed this time in terms of retention of contingent workforces? What goes into that?
Yeah. So retention is mostly a conversation for the temporary workforce where you have a clear staffing agency partner there. So that gets down to how are you selecting the partners to support you? How are they integrated with you, your program? How well are you doing the assessment of the workers who are coming through them in terms of them achieving the outcome that is required? So it could be in terms of quarterly feedback that goes to the hiring manager for the worker, then going back to the staffing agency partner in order to think about feedback, coaching, etc. So you can build those mechanisms. Overall, as a program, you can also track who started with a specific end date in mind, and did they complete those contracts or not. So if you see more and more contracts not getting completed, then that's a conversation that you can have with the suppliers to see what can we do to make that going. What I've seen is like Netflix is a good pull brand, right? So you can pull good talent to work for contingent talent. So we never have an issue in terms of attracting talent, and the experience that they get is something that they won't get outside in terms of understanding the culture, in terms of the work that they do, and also the talent density that we have. So the amount of learnings that they can have with the interactions that they get, and all of that adds in to keep contractors to complete the engagement as well. And we don't stop them from applying for full-time roles when they are in their last 2-3 months of their contracts too. So that's another way that you can engage them to say, if you complete the contract well, then you have an opportunity to even work your full-time if that's what you want.
So when it comes to managing or even working with partners in terms of retention or in terms of getting the results that you might set your team out to get, what are the key metrics or KPIs that you might have?
Yeah, you should have a scorecard. It should be a balanced scorecard because it's the way we look at it is one, they are responsible for hiring us good talent. So you have your recruitment metrics that goes into it as well, like how quickly can they turn around profiles for us, how many CVs they submit to converting to a contract hire, then how many contractors complete their engagements, and what's the feedback that comes from the business, the workers that they have. Yeah, and then also how proactive are they to engage with us, like wanting to know our culture, wanting to know our business, and the proactiveness with which they uh, come in with pointed questions so that they know what is the requirement of the business and they can match it with the external market. So you assess them on all of those in your balance scorecard, and also compliance plays a role. Like you got to ensure they pay their workers on time. They ensure that they have good benefits. We don't dictate benefits because they're not our employees, but we want to ensure that they have good benefits, which is paid out on time. And we track contractor satisfaction with their suppliers as well. And that then adds in into the scorecard too.
Right. And you also mentioned earlier that you don't stop them from applying internally, right? If that's what you meant. So, and is there a proactive approach when you've identified these non-employees who might be performing well? Is there a proactive approach to get them to try to become employees?
So in the Netflix environment, because it's a smaller setup, we do get them connected to TA when a need arises, right? Like, so not like a clear flow in a system, but I've had organizations before where, let's say, for example, you have a contractor, you have a check-in with the manager, and they say he's great, and it's the last 2 months of the contract, then that pulls in into the pipeline for TA, for example. And the same thing goes the other way as well. Like if you have a direct sourcing function within your organization from where you can hire contractors yourself using your brand and your internal career site and marketing and so on, then talent acquisition, when they are connecting with candidates, they can have a small question saying, would you be interested in a contractor role with our company? And if they say yes, then that becomes a pool for contractors population as well. And whenever we have roles that matches the skills, then we can go in. Now, that's what the technology can enable. And that those are innovations that are happening, and many organizations that are different trajectories to implement them.
So when advertising for these roles, and you go through a third-party vendor or partner agency, right, to look up these roles, but shouldn't be doing that in-house. What goes into a job ad? What do you need to disclose when it comes to hiring contingent workers? What might be best practices?
Yeah, depending upon who you ask, you will get a varied perspective on this. Some would say that you should not hire at all, and that's the conservative side of compliance. And some would say you can, provided you keep enough guardrails between your full-time structure of JDs and what you communicate, what you offer, etc., and your contractor hiring. So it depends what's the appetite within the organizations and who's your compliance advocate as well. So one of the things that you should make it very clear is in the job title itself, you call out contractor so that it's very clear at the outset that you're hiring for a contract role. And you also, in your job descriptions, ensure that you're not going to payroll them. You will be payrolled by a third-party agency. So you call out those things so that it's very clear that the person who's applying for is well informed to know that they're applying for a contractor role. Then, of course, there are things like they can't be in a position where they're managing people. So your JDs don't have those kind of languages in it. Then whatever best practices that you have on your full-time side in terms of inclusive language, more in terms of what they're going to deliver to or learn from is what you put forward. So those elements stay the same.
Right. And in terms of, presenting culture, I know Netflix is known for its forward-thinking culture and it's famous for that, right? So how do you get the contingent workforce to integrate into this culture, and what impact does it have on the contingent workforce experience?
Yeah, we are very high on inclusion and diversity, right? And that's a very key enabler for our business and decision making within Netflix. And because we are so invested and so high on applying inclusion and diversity to all aspects of what we do, starting from our content creation to our business strategies, we can't leave contingent workforce aside because they are closer to us, they are part of our teams, etc. So we apply the same lens when it comes to them as well. In terms of any facilities that we have within the office that they are part of, they have access to it. Like we have our free lunches, for example, it's extended to them. We have a hardware set up through which they can pick up what they want for enabling their work. They have access to that. So we don't put any restrictions, so it's kind of open. We do kind of set some guardrails in terms of they can't be part of any employee resource groups, for example, because that's only for employees. When we have offsites, they will be part of the offsites, but only from a work perspective. So whatever we discuss in terms of what is needed for them to do the work that they are part of, they would be. But if it's anything developmental, if it's anything that where we are talking about strategy for the team or the business, etc., then they won't be. So we kind of put those guardrails in, and when we onboard a contractor, we also have an onboarding workflow for them, so that they understand our culture, they understand the office space, they understand the team that they're going in, and they have a one-on-one, like an onboarding 101 with our team as well, the contingent talent team, where we also make it very clear in terms of like what are our pillars, like cultural pillars, how does it apply for a contractor roles, and who to go to for what, so that confusion doesn't stay as well, and that's clearly called out. So, for example, some companies have badges which differentiate between a contractor versus a full-time employee. We don't. So kind of bring into smaller things that we do to ensure that there is that inclusiveness.
Right, and that it really looks like a team at the end of the day with no segregation in that sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, if I have someone walking in, I won't know if that's an employee or a contractor. So, and I think that's the most important bit, which the contractor themselves feel that here they're not treated any different.
And for businesses that are looking to maybe improve the way they manage contingent talent, what might be some best practices in your experience for them that you might recommend?
As in, one of the things that we touched upon was finding out like where are your contractors based, like what are you hiring them for, which teams are hiring them, etc. So one, you need a good vendor management system, as we call it in this industry. It's like an ATS, but it does more than an ATS, where you're also hiring through it, but you're also managing your contractors through it in terms of timesheets, invoicing, the feedbacks that I was talking about, surveys, etc. So it does a lot more. It can also integrate with your HRIS if you want to create a profile for access, etc. So it can happen. It can also connect to your talent database. So having a good vendor management system, there are lots in the market, is key. A key decision that companies also make is, should we do it in-house or should we outsource it? Many times that expertise doesn't lie within the business. So first stage, they look at probably getting somebody else come in with the expertise, who can do the due diligence, who can get a technology, who can put in a workflow, and also have a team to manage it within the organization. So you can think about that. Even before that, I think it would also be like making a task force, including your employment, legal, finance, procurement team, your technology team, HR, in order to define what this program would look like. Put some guidelines in terms of how would you define contractors, who's responsible for what, etc. So once you have a better understanding of that, you can build from there on.
And you mentioned the vendor management system and also ATSs, right? So in terms of technology and the impact it has on managing contingent workforces, what kind of technologies do you use to manage a contingent workforce? And might it be the same tools that you use that you would use for full-time hires?
No, so it's different. So I mean, it is kind of merging together. Even if you have let's say an ATS, and let's say you have a vendor management system, both the fields create a worker profile, right? Either a worker profile or a non-employee worker profile, because you want to track what your workforce looks like, whether they're on-site, off-site, what their end dates are, what equipments do they have, access, etc. So you have that development happening where systems are coming closer together to that enterprise system. Then, depending upon your program, if you're doing direct sourcing, then the management system have that capability, or would you want to build in a standalone direct sourcing technology? Some organizations also has an intake for contractors or full-time employees, so that could sit in, let's say, your ELP, or it could sit somewhere else where you're helping the business make a decision of what to hire. Should I hire a full-time employee? Should I hire a contractor? So yeah, those gets in. When you go to the independent contractor or the freelancer side of things, you also need to vet them well, and you need to ensure that they are really freelancers, which means that you're not their prime source of income, or you're not giving them feedback, directing them how to work, choosing their time to work, etc. So there's lots that goes into vetting contractors, and that vetting today is also supported by some technologies. So it could become a group of different technology for contingent workforce. Yeah, it hasn't come all together, but yeah, I think that's what will happen.
So in terms of forecasting the need for contingent workforces or contingent employees, right? What do you do in order to prepare yourself for maybe the next 12 years? We're entering into 2024. What steps go into that?
It's a difficult problem to solve, to forecast for contingent very proactively. Now, and also one of the things that many organizations are thinking about is a skills-based organization, right? So if you're can go in that direction, and if you know, okay, these are the skills that we want to build, and then make a decision of what are those skills that we already have or which we can build internally, which are core to our business, and what are the skills that we can always procure from out, then I think forecasting would become easier. Otherwise, the way we do it is we look back the past trends of hiring contractors. And then if there's any incremental changes, then we feed that back to the business to keep that in mind while the business. But it's not very proactive. It's still a very reactionary hiring that we do, especially on the temporary side, temporary and the contractor side. Maybe on the outsourcing side, it could be forecasted, because you can say, okay, we're setting up a different function which has certain types of work that can be outsourced, and you build it into your forecast.
As we enter the next few years, we see so many disruptions already, mass layoffs and availability of talent, even a difficulty finding the right talent with the right kind of skill, right? Is there any kind of trend you think might be affecting this space?
What I've seen is availability of talent has become easier over the last 10 years. Even in countries like Korea and Japan, where stability is what's needed for the work. Yeah. But now more and more, because of the situations that we see, no job is safe, right? No job is permanent, if you can look at it that way. So with that understanding going into the talent pool, more and more candidates are open to either full-time or contractor role. So that's one trend. And also with the new age workforce coming in, who are also non-traditional, right? So they don't have the same mindset as what probably the millennials or
the Gen Z, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So they are also open to try. They want to try different things before they make up their mind in terms of what they want to do. So you do have that workforce that makes it easy. Different countries are thinking about labor codes and labor laws differently as well. They're trying to make it more liberal, which helps, because that has been one of the deterrent as well for companies to think about contingent talent holistically, because they think it's riddled with so much of compliance. Maybe we should just completely avoid it. So I think those are the things that will play out. And of course, technology with generative AI, etc., coming in, you never know how efficiency will come in and what that would drive things forward.
So has generative AI played a role in your team so far? That we've been seeing lots of different use cases and newer tools coming out in that sense over the past year.
No, we haven't yet. I mean, as a program level, we haven't. Individually, we do try to gain efficiencies, right, in terms of brainstorming or doing some research, etc. So it's just limited to that.
So, Vinos, what advice would you give someone who's starting out in the talent space today?
I would say forget what talent has been so far. Think of it from a branding, marketing, and a technology lens. If you know technology in terms of using data, etc., you will have an edge. If you know how to market you and your positions and your company outside, you will have an edge. So I think those are the things that I would put in, like understanding data, using that to consult with your business will give you a super edge compared to how traditionally TA has operated.
Thank you so much, Vinos, for your time and these great insights into building a system or a process around managing contingent workforces and all the different nuances that come into play, right? And all the different stakeholders you need to be thinking about when you build or when you plan to go down this way. So thank you so much again, Vinos. Now, for the benefit of those who are listening in, and if there's anyone from the audience who might want to pick up a conversation, you can share your contact details.
I think LinkedIn would be the best way to reach. You can just search Vinos Samuel. And I am not so active, but I'm on Twitter as well. So Vinos25 would be another avenue.
Thank you so much. Thanks again, Vinos. And we have been in conversation with Vinos Samuel of Netflix Asia Pacific. Thank you for joining us, and remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.